Hi guys, tonight we begin a calm yet extraordinary journey into the untold genius of Leonardo da Vinci. Imagine a man whose imagination leapt centuries ahead of his time, a painter who captured the soul, an inventor who dreamed of machines that would not exist for hundreds of years, and a thinker who saw the world as a living puzzle. In this story, we'll gently step into his mind, piece by piece, and discover why Leonardo's vision still fascinates us centuries later. But before we begin, for those who enjoy slow, thoughtful stories about legendary figures, hit like, subscribe and share in the comments which personality or historical figure you'd like me to cover next. And tell me, where are you watching from? I'm always curious to see the different places my viewers are from. Leonardo was born in 1452 in the small Tuscan village of Vinci, nestled among rolling hills and olive groves. His childhood was simple, yet nature itself became his first teacher. Streams, stones, insects, and birds filled his early days, and from them he absorbed lessons no classroom could provide. The rhythm of flowing water, the turning of leaves, and the flight of birds would echo in his later notebooks, transformed into sketches of inventions and studies of motion. Unlike many children of his time, Leonardo was born outside of marriage, and this meant he did not follow the conventional path of education. Instead of Latin grammar and rigid schooling, his curiosity grew unrestrained, guided more by observation than rules. This freedom shaped him into a thinker who asked questions others did not dare to ask. At 14, Leonardo was sent to Florence, the vibrant heart of the Renaissance. There, he entered the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, one of the finest artists and craftsmen of the age. The studio was alive with activity, apprentices grinding pigments, sculpting clay, and casting bronze. Leonardo quickly stood out, not only for his skill with the brush, but also for his restless attention to detail. He observed the way muscles flexed beneath the skin, how light softened across a cheek, and how even the smallest movements carried meaning. Verrocchio soon noticed that his young apprentice surpassed even the master's own ability in certain details. A famous story tells of a painting where Verrocchio asked Leonardo to paint an angel. The result was so graceful, so filled with life, that Verrocchio is said to have put down his brush, declaring he would never paint again. Whether true or not, the tale reflects the awe Leonardo inspired from the very beginning. Yet Leonardo's genius did not remain confined to painting alone. In the corners of his notebooks he sketched contraptions no one had ever imagined. Flying machines with wings like bats, armoured vehicles resembling modern tanks, bridges that could fold and move. These were not idle fantasies. They were born from endless hours of observing birds in flight, studying rivers, and taking apart simple mechanisms to understand their secrets. His handwriting, written backward in mirrored script, only added to the mystery, as if he were recording thoughts meant for the future, not his own age. Florence fed Leonardo's curiosity with art, science, and philosophy, but his mind could never stay still. He experimented with pigments that failed, designed plays with moving scenery, and built mechanical devices for entertainment. Each success and each failure added to the depth of his vision. What made Leonardo unique was not just his brilliance, but his patience with complexity. He did not separate art from science or beauty from mathematics. To him, everything was connected in a single web of knowledge. And so, the boy from Vinci was becoming something rare, a man whose mind belonged not just to his time, but to all times. This is only the beginning of his story, a story that will unfold gently, one part at a time, revealing how a single mind could stretch across centuries. After his years in Florence, Leonardo's reputation began to grow quietly, yet steadily. He was known not only for his ability to paint, but for the unusual way he approached problems. Where others saw limits, he saw possibilities. Florence was alive with competition, with artists like Botticelli and Ghirlandaio rising in fame, but Leonardo carried himself differently. He often left commissions unfinished, not from lack of skill, but because his restless curiosity pulled him toward the next question, before the last was resolved. This pattern, though frustrating to his patrons, became a hallmark of his mind. Always reaching forward, always searching, one of his earliest masterpieces was the Adoration of the Magi. The painting, left incomplete, shows a swirl of figures converging toward the infant Christ, their faces full of awe, tension, and mystery. Though unfinished, it already carried the unmistakable quality of Leonardo's vision. Movement within stillness, depth beyond the surface. Even in incompletion, his work spoke louder than polished pieces by others. Yet Leonardo was not content with being only an artist. He filled his notebooks with studies of the human body, dissecting animals to understand muscles, veins, and bones. He wanted to know not just how to paint a smile, but how the muscles formed it, how nerves connected to emotion, how the body's architecture mirrored the geometry of the world. These explorations were private, hidden from most eyes, but they reveal a man who believed that to understand beauty, one must understand truth. It was during this time that Leonardo began to experiment with flight. He observed the wings of birds with meticulous attention, sketching patterns of feathers, angles of lift, and the motion of air. He built small models and imagined machines powered by human strength, stretching canvas over wooden frames, attempting to mimic nature's perfection. Though none of his flying machines ever took to the skies, the drawings themselves became a testament to a dream centuries ahead of reality. Leonardo's fascination with water was no less profound. He studied rivers, tides, and the flow of currents, convinced that water was the key to understanding the earth itself. He sketched designs for canals, water-lifting devices, and even imagined how water might erode mountains and carve valleys over time. To him, nature was a living book, and he read it page by page, patient and attentive. Despite his genius, Leonardo was often described as gentle, quiet, and thoughtful. He preferred to observe rather than to argue, and those who worked with him recalled his kindness toward animals and his distaste for violence. He would buy caged birds in the market, only to release them into the sky. He ate simply, often choosing a vegetarian diet, unusual for his time. These small details show a man whose compassion ran as deeply as his intellect. As the years passed, Leonardo's restless mind sought greater challenges. Florence, though rich with opportunity, was not enough for him. He looked toward Milan, where powerful rulers and wealthy patrons offered the promise of larger projects. It was there, in the service of Ludovico Sforza, that Leonardo would begin some of his most ambitious works, paintings, engineering marvels, and visions that would stretch the imagination of an entire city. When Leonardo arrived in Milan in the early 1480s, he stepped into a city very different from Florence. Florence was a place of art and philosophy, but Milan was a city of power, ruled by dukes and shaped by military ambition. Leonardo entered the service of Ludovico Sforza, a man who valued spectacle, engineering, and innovation as much as painting. To secure his place, Leonardo wrote a remarkable letter, describing not his skills as an artist, but his talents as an engineer. He promised designs for bridges, fortifications, canals, and weapons, and only at the end did he mention his ability to paint. This alone showed how he saw himself, not only as an artist, but as a man of ideas capable of transforming the world. In Milan, Leonardo was given opportunities to test his imagination on a grand scale. One of his greatest projects was the plan for a colossal bronze horse, intended to honour the Duke's father. The statue would have been larger than anything attempted in Europe, requiring new methods of casting and engineering. Leonardo studied the anatomy of horses, filling pages with precise sketches of their muscles and movements. He built clay models, preparing for the immense challenge. Yet history intervened. When war broke out, the bronze meant for the horse was diverted to make cannons, and the dream remained unfinished. Still, the vision itself was extraordinary, and centuries later, sculptors used Leonardo's notes to finally complete the work he imagined. During his years in Milan, Leonardo created one of his most celebrated masterpieces, The Last Supper. Painted on the wall of the monastery of Santa Maria delle Grazie, it was unlike any depiction before it. Instead of a static row of figures, Leonardo captured the instant Jesus revealed that one of his disciples would betray him. Shock, disbelief, and sorrow ripple across the table, each face unique, each gesture alive with emotion. The composition draws the eye to the centre, yet the drama spreads outward, making the viewer feel present at the moment. Though the painting has suffered from decay and damage over time, its impact remains immense. Alongside his art, Leonardo continued his studies of science and mechanics. He designed stage sets for court entertainments, moving scenery with ingenious mechanisms. He sketched machines for lifting heavy stones, devices for irrigation, and even plans for a city with clean streets and separate waterways to reduce disease. His mind never rested. He saw connections between beauty, utility, and health, long before others imagined such possibilities. In Milan, Leonardo also built lasting friendships and worked with talented pupils, sharing his vision and spreading his influence. Though he often left projects incomplete, what he finished left a mark so deep that even fragments of his genius seemed greater than the complete works of others. Milan became not just a chapter in his life, but a stage where his genius could expand beyond the canvas into the realms of engineering, science, and human imagination. Leonardo's years in Milan were filled with constant movement between art, science, and invention. He never limited himself to a single discipline, and the city offered him endless opportunities to explore. At the court of Ludovico Sforza, he designed elaborate festivals complete with costumes, mechanical devices, and dazzling illusions. These events were not trivial amusements. They revealed his ability to merge engineering with storytelling, turning a simple celebration into a wonder of imagination. His notebooks from this period show sketches of revolving stages, hidden lifts, and machines that made statues move as if alive. He understood that art could inspire awe, but combined with mechanics, it could also create an entirely new experience. At the same time, he deepened his study of anatomy. Fascinated by the human form, he dissected both animals and human cadavers, creating drawings of unmatched precision. His studies revealed muscles stretching and contracting, the chambers of the heart, and even the branching of veins. These images were centuries ahead of their time, so detailed that modern doctors still admire them. For Leonardo, the body was a machine of divine complexity, and to understand it was to glimpse the secrets of creation itself. Yet despite his scientific rigour, he always approached the body with reverence, blending exact observation with a sense of beauty. Beyond anatomy, Leonardo pursued mathematics, geometry, and proportion. He collaborated with scholars to explore how numbers governed harmony in music, architecture, and art. The famous drawing of the Vitruvian Man, created around this time, perfectly captured this belief. A man with outstretched arms and legs, inscribed in both a circle and a square, symbolized Leonardo's vision of the human being as a measure of the universe itself. This single image, calm and balanced, reflects not only mathematical principles, but also Leonardo's conviction that humanity and nature were deeply interconnected. While Milan prospered under Ludovico, tensions simmered across Italy. Politics, alliances, and invasions constantly shifted the balance of power. Leonardo, though devoted to his work, could not escape the turbulence. His great bronze horse project was halted by war, and eventually French forces invaded Milan, scattering the court. Leonardo, ever adaptable, gathered his pupils and left the city, searching once again for a place where his ideas could flourish. The collapse of his patron's power was a reminder that even the most ambitious visions could be undone by forces beyond one's control. Yet Leonardo did not despair. He carried his notebooks, sketches, and unfinished dreams with him, knowing that each place, each patron, and each moment in time offered a new canvas for his genius. In leaving Milan, he stepped into another chapter of discovery, ready to continue his lifelong pursuit of knowledge, beauty, and invention. When Leonardo left Milan after the French invasion, his path led him back toward Florence, a city that had changed since his youth. The Medici family, powerful patrons of art and learning, had returned to influence, and Florence was alive once again with competition and creativity. Leonardo, now a mature master, carried with him not only his fame but also the weight of unfinished dreams. Yet he was never discouraged for long. Each change of place seemed to offer him fresh ground for experimentation. In Florence, he accepted commissions that tested his artistic powers, but he also continued to chase new scientific questions. One of his great projects at this time was a large mural known as the Battle of Anghiari. It was intended to decorate the council hall of Florence and to rival the grandeur of ancient works. Leonardo planned the composition with a swirl of horses, soldiers, and fierce expressions, capturing the chaos of conflict with unmatched vitality. He experimented with new painting techniques, but the materials did not cooperate. The pigments melted, the surface cracked, and much of the work faded quickly. Even so, eyewitnesses described it as breathtaking, filled with energy and power that surpassed anything they had seen. Though the mural was lost, its influence endured, inspiring later artists to strive for similar intensity. During this period, Leonardo also painted one of the most iconic portraits in history, the Mona Lisa. Unlike grand altarpieces or epic murals, this painting was small, intimate, and mysterious. The sitter's identity remains uncertain, but the painting itself transcends biography. What draws viewers is the enigmatic smile, the softness of the transitions between light and shadow, and the sense of life that seems to breathe from the canvas. Leonardo employed a technique called sfumato, blending tones so delicately that edges dissolve into a smoky haze. The result is a portrait that feels both real and otherworldly, timeless and elusive. Beyond painting, Leonardo deepened his engineering studies, drafting plans for bridges, canals, and even devices of war. He imagined an ideal city, designed with clean streets, fresh air, and efficient waterways to prevent disease. At a time when plague still haunted Europe, his ideas were radical, centuries ahead of modern urban planning. He also observed the motion of water, drawing whirlpools and eddies, convinced that the flow of rivers could teach lessons about the movement of blood and air. His notebook shows sketches of flying machines, submarines, and tools that would not exist until the modern age. Life in Florence also brought him into contact with younger artists, among them Michelangelo. The two are rivals as much as they were contemporaries, their contrasting temperaments sparking comparisons. While Michelangelo embodied intensity and force, Leonardo was subtle, patient, and thoughtful. Their rivalry pushed each to greater heights, shaping the course of Renaissance art. In these years, Leonardo's reputation as both artist and thinker grew stronger, but his restless spirit kept urging him forward. Florence was once again becoming too small for his ambitions, and soon he would journey to new places, carrying with him the endless curiosity that defined his life. After his return to Florence and the creation of works that would echo through centuries, Leonardo once again found himself drawn away from the city's walls. His reputation had spread across Italy, and rulers sought his talents not only for art but for engineering and diplomacy. Around this time, he entered the service of Cesare Borgia, one of the most powerful and feared figures of the age. Leonardo became a military engineer in his entourage, travelling across central Italy to survey fortresses, plan defences, and map territories. His maps were astonishingly precise, unlike anything that existed before, offering a bird's-eye view of landscapes that allowed generals to plan campaigns with clarity. These journeys exposed him to towns, rivers, and mountains, which he captured with an accuracy centuries ahead of ordinary cartography. Beyond military work, they deepened his fascination with geography and the shaping forces of nature. Leonardo believed that understanding terrain, rivers and winds was as essential for builders and rulers as for soldiers. His time with Borgia was brief, yet it expanded his horizons, showing him how knowledge could serve both creation and destruction. When he left, he carried not the weapons of war but notebooks filled with insights, drawings, and reflections. Returning once more to Florence, Leonardo accepted smaller commissions, but his mind seemed increasingly occupied with studies outside painting. He dissected cadavers in hospitals at night, producing drawings of organs, muscles, and bones that surpassed all previous anatomical knowledge. His studies of the human heart revealed the twisting flow of blood through valves, discoveries that would not be confirmed until centuries later. To Leonardo, the human body was a marvel of engineering, a structure guided by mathematics and natural laws. He described the skeleton as a framework, muscles as pulleys, and tendons as cords, yet he never reduced it to mere mechanics. He always saw life as something sacred, blending scientific precision with deep respect. During these years, he also pursued the mysteries of light and vision. He studied how the eye received images, how perspective shaped what we see, and how light scattered in the atmosphere. His notes on optics influenced his art, allowing him to paint with unmatched realism, the play of shadow across a face, the depth in a landscape. These effects were not only artistic choices but the results of careful scientific study. By the early 1500s, Leonardo stood at a crossroads. He was admired as a genius, yet he often left works incomplete, distracted by questions that reached beyond the demands of his patrons. To some, this restlessness seemed like a flaw, but in truth, it was his greatest gift. The refusal to be confined by a single role, the constant search for knowledge in every corner of existence. Florence could no longer contain his vision, and soon new journeys awaited him. By the early 16th century, Leonardo's path once more led him back to Milan, now under new rulers after the fall of the Sforza. Unlike before, he returned not as a young apprentice seeking favour, but as a celebrated master, known across Italy for his paintings and inventions. His reputation had grown so wide that even foreign kings admired his genius. In Milan, he resumed work on commissions, yet his interests expanded further into science and engineering. He produced studies of mechanics, imagining gears, pulleys, and screw-like devices that foreshadowed engines and machinery yet to be built. Among his remarkable ideas was a design for a giant crossbow, not merely as a weapon, but as a demonstration of force and proportion. These inventions reflected not bloodlust, but his endless fascination with the laws of motion. During this period, he also worked on one of his most celebrated paintings, the Virgin of the Rocks. With its soft light, intricate figures, and mysterious atmosphere, it captured his mastery of both religious symbolism and natural observation. He placed the sacred within a landscape of rocks, plants, and flowing water, reminding viewers that divinity was inseparable from the natural world. Leonardo's notebooks from these years also reveal his growing passion for hydraulics. He studied canals, locks, and irrigation systems, proposing ways to improve navigation and agriculture. Milan, with its many waterways, offered him the perfect setting to explore how human design could work in harmony with nature. He imagined canals that could transport goods more efficiently, and systems to protect cities from flooding. Many of these ideas remained on paper, but their logic influenced engineers for centuries to come. At the same time, Leonardo's studies of anatomy reached new heights. He partnered with physicians, dissecting human bodies to reveal the structures beneath. His drawings of the human skull, the spinal column, and the inner ear display both scientific precision and artistic elegance. These images were so advanced that they might easily be mistaken for works of the modern age. Yet most of his anatomical studies remained unpublished, locked within his private notebooks, waiting for a future that could appreciate them fully. Life in Milan also offered him a circle of pupils and collaborators. Among them was Francesco Melzi, a young nobleman who became his devoted assistant and later preserved much of his legacy. Surrounded by students, Leonardo's workshop became not just a place of labour, but a centre of learning, where art, science, and invention mingled freely. Despite his fame, Leonardo remained modest, more interested in questions than in accolades. His return to Milan marked not a repetition of old glories, but a deepening of his lifelong pursuit of understanding, blending art, engineering, and philosophy into one seamless vision. Leonardo's second stay in Milan revealed more clearly than ever the breadth of his mind. While many artists focused only on commissions, he filled his time with endless studies of nature. He observed how plants grew, noting the spirals of leaves around a stem and the way sunlight reached each branch. These studies, later known as his investigations into botany, were not idle sketches. They showed his conviction that the same patterns governing rivers and mussels also guided the growth of trees and flowers. To Leonardo, the universe spoke one language, and he sought to read it everywhere. His fascination with motion deepened as well. He drew machines that could lift weights with minimal effort, water wheels that turned with perfect balance, and even concepts resembling modern bearings. He believed that by studying movement, of bodies, of fluids, of planets, he could uncover the harmony of creation. Many of his designs, though never built, carried principles that engineers centuries later would rediscover. Art, however, remained a constant presence. He created a second version of the Virgin of the Rocks, refining the composition with subtle changes. The figures seemed to emerge from darkness into light, their gestures tender yet deliberate. The balance of geometry and emotion reflects Leonardo's belief that art should mirror both the rational order of mathematics and the mystery of human spirit. Around this time, Leonardo also turned his mind toward architecture. He sketched plans for churches with centralized domes, inspired by both classical symmetry and natural harmony. His designs emphasized light, proportion, and clarity, qualities that would later define Renaissance architecture. Though most of his plans remained unbuilt, they influenced the vision of architects who came after him. Beyond his technical achievements, Leonardo's personality left a lasting impression on those around him. Accounts describe him as calm, patient, and endlessly curious. He could entertain friends by bending thin metals into impossible shapes, or by improvising songs on a lute, for he was also a skilled musician. His presence carried both charm and quiet intensity, drawing people to him not by force, but by fascination. Yet even in these fruitful years, Leonardo faced setbacks. Some projects stalled for lack of funds, others because political instability disrupted the city. The French presence in Milan meant shifting alliances, and artists often found themselves caught between patrons. Still, Leonardo's resilience kept him moving forward, recording every thought in his notebooks as if he were storing treasures for future generations. This habit, his relentless writing and sketching, became one of his greatest gifts to history. While many works were lost, his notebooks preserved the outlines of a mind that refused to rest. In Milan, surrounded by students, inventions, and the natural beauty of the Lombard plain, Leonardo entered a mature phase of life, weaving together the strands of artist, engineer, scientist, and philosopher into one. As the years passed in Milan, Leonardo's curiosity reached into new realms of study. One of his most remarkable pursuits was geology. He examined layers of rock, seashells embedded in mountains, and the erosion of riverbanks. To him, these were clues that the Earth had a far older story than people believed. He proposed that seas once covered regions now dry, and that time itself could be measured by the slow shaping of land. Such thoughts challenged traditional views, yet he wrote them with quiet conviction, leaving notes that future scientists would later confirm. At the same time, he studied the sky. While astronomy was not his central field, he reflected on the nature of light, the moon's glow, and the possibility that the Earth might shine back upon the heavens. His insights, though brief, showed a mind open to cosmic questions as much as earthly ones. Art, however, remained at the core of his reputation. During this period, he painted portraits that captured not just likeness, but presence. His Lady with an Ermine depicts Cecilia Gallerani, the young mistress of Ludovico Sforza, holding a white animal that seems alive in her arms. The painting combines elegance with intimacy, portraying not only beauty but intelligence in her gaze. Once again, Leonardo showed his ability to see beyond appearances, offering viewers a glimpse of inner life. His skill extended beyond the canvas. He designed pageants for the Milanese court, where mechanical devices lifted gods from the stage, stars moved across ceilings, and illusions transported audiences into other worlds. These entertainments required as much engineering as artistry, and Leonardo delighted in blending the two. They revealed his lifelong belief that art and science were not separate, but partners in wonder. In his notebooks, he continued to record inventions, machines for weaving, devices for measuring humidity, even ideas for underwater breathing. Though these designs often remain theoretical, they prove how he constantly anticipated human needs long before his era could meet them. Despite his accomplishments, life in Milan grew unsettled once again. Political tensions rose, wars returned, and patrons shifted with each new ruler. Leonardo, adaptable as always, prepared to move on, but he did not leave empty-handed. He carried with him the lessons of nature's patterns, the portraits that revealed unseen truths, and the endless pages of sketches that captured the restless heartbeat of his mind. For Leonardo, each city was not just a place to live, but a canvas upon which to test imagination. Milan had offered him scope for grandeur, but change was inevitable. His journey was far from over, and new chapters awaited him beyond the walls of the city he'd come to know so well. When Leonardo eventually left Milan again, he returned to Florence carrying not only fame but decades of accumulated knowledge. The city welcomed him as a master of unrivaled skill, yet his mind was already fixed on new challenges. It was here that he received a commission to paint a portrait that would become the most celebrated in history, the Mona Lisa. Unlike the grand murals of the past, this work was intimate, yet it captured something eternal. The subject, believed to be Lisa Gherardini, sits with folded hands, her gaze steady, her lips curved in that mysterious smile which has intrigued generations. Leonardo employed delicate layers of paint, using his sfumato technique to blend tones so subtly that edges seemed to vanish into shadow. The background landscape, with winding rivers and distant mountains, mirrors the mystery of the figure herself, both serene and unknowable. While the Mona Lisa became legendary, Leonardo was not confined to painting alone. He studied hydraulics, designing systems to control rivers and protect cities from flooding. Florence, built along the Arno, constantly faced the threat of water, and Leonardo envisioned projects to redirect channels, construct locks, and improve navigation. His notes reveal a profound understanding of how nature's forces could be harnessed for human benefit. During this period, he also competed indirectly with Michelangelo, who was painting the Battle of Cassina for the same council chamber where Leonardo had attempted his Battle of Anghiari. Their rivalry electrified Florence, with citizens comparing their styles, Michelangelo's muscular intensity against Leonardo's subtle grace. Though both works remained unfinished, the contest marked a defining moment in Renaissance art, showing how two geniuses pushed one another toward innovation. Beyond art and engineering, Leonardo deepened his studies of anatomy, producing drawings of the human body so accurate that modern medicine still respects them. His sketches of the heart, the skeleton, and the nervous system reveal a vision centuries ahead of his time. Yet these studies were private, hidden in notebooks, for society was not ready to embrace their implications. Florence admired Leonardo's brilliance, but his restless spirit meant he never stayed fixed on one task for long. Commissions were begun and abandoned, projects envisioned yet unrealized. To his patrons, this could be frustrating. To history, it was a gift, for it left behind an archive of ideas richer than any single completed work. Florence had given him roots, but his mind was always reaching for the horizon. In the years following his return to Florence, Leonardo found himself increasingly preoccupied with the mysteries of flight. Birds became his constant teachers. He observed their wings with the patience of a naturalist, sketching the curves of feathers, the tilt of bodies in the air, and the invisible currents that carried them. His notebooks filled with detailed studies, diagrams of flapping mechanisms, and designs for gliders that imitated nature. Among his creations was the ornithopter, a machine with wings meant to be powered by human strength. Though it never rose into the sky, the concept revealed how far ahead his imagination travelled. He understood that air, like water, was a medium that could be studied, measured, and mastered. Beyond the mechanics, he also considered the philosophy of flight. To Leonardo, the ability to rise above the earth was not just a technical challenge, but a poetic symbol of freedom, a way for humankind to touch the divine. His fascination with water continued as well. He designed machines to lift it, canals to carry it, and dams to control it. He even studied whirlpools, noting how spirals formed in both rivers and smoke, convinced that such patterns were universal. To him, the smallest detail mirrored the grandest design. These insights placed him centuries ahead of fluid dynamics. While his inventions often remained sketches, their principles were sound, and many later engineers recognized their brilliance. During this same period, Leonardo was drawn into civic projects for Florence. He proposed plans to divert the Arno River, creating new trade routes and protecting the city from floods. Though the scheme was never realized, it shows how his genius reached beyond art into the realm of urban planning. He dreamed of cities with wide streets, proper sanitation, and flowing water, visions that would only become reality centuries later. Despite his restless genius, Leonardo was known among friends for his gentle humour and kindness. He entertained companions with stories, improvised music on the lute, and clever riddles. His workshop became a lively place where apprentices not only learned to paint, but absorbed his way of seeing the world. He taught them to observe nature closely, to study shadows and reflections, to find meaning in the smallest details. Yet beneath this warmth was a man who never stopped questioning, never content with answers already given. Florence admired him, but Leonardo seemed always to belong to a wider horizon, a mind searching for truth in every corner of existence. By the second decade of the 16th century, Leonardo's fame stretched across Italy, yet his life was marked by constant movement. Opportunities arose and faded quickly, and patrons often shifted with political tides. Around this time, he entered the service of Giuliano de' Medici in Rome, a city filled with artists, scholars, and architects. Rome was alive with projects, from the rebuilding of St. Peter's Basilica to the commissions of Raphael and Michelangelo. For Leonardo, it was both inspiring and challenging. He was no longer the youngest genius in the room. Instead, he stood as a seasoned master, whose curiosity still outpaced all others. In Rome, Leonardo pursued his scientific investigations with greater intensity. He studied optics, exploring how light bent through glass and water. His notebooks contain experiments with lenses, reflections, and the behaviour of vision itself. Some of these explorations hinted at principles that would later shape telescopes and microscopes, though his discoveries remained private. At the same time, he continued his anatomical research, dissecting animals and, when possible, human cadavers. His drawings of the brain, nerves, and circulatory system were astonishingly accurate, mapping the hidden architecture of life. Rome also offered him access to discussions with mathematicians, architects, and natural philosophers. Leonardo thrived in these circles, yet he often found himself frustrated by the slow pace of acceptance. His ideas leapt ahead of his time, and the world around him struggled to keep up. While Raphael rose with graceful frescoes and Michelangelo with the thunder of the Sistine Chapel, Leonardo pursued subtler, less visible work, pouring his genius into studies that few would see. Despite the grandeur of Rome, he did not produce many great paintings during this stay. His attention was divided among inventions, anatomical notes, and engineering proposals. He imagined new weapons, bridges, and machines, though most never left the page. Patrons grew impatient, desiring tangible results, while Leonardo's mind wandered toward problems centuries in the future. Yet even in this tension, his greatness shone. Visitors to his workshop described an atmosphere filled with sketches, models, and the quiet intensity of a man endlessly absorbed in discovery. He may not have matched the monumental commissions of his rivals, but he was building something far more enduring, a treasury of knowledge that would survive long after walls crumbled and battles ended. Rome gave him both inspiration and disillusionment. It revealed the brilliance of his contemporaries, but also reminded him that not all genius finds recognition in its own time. For Leonardo, the pursuit of truth remained its own reward, whether or not the world chose to understand it. Leonardo's years in Rome, though filled with opportunity, gradually became a period of quiet disappointment. The Medici court valued his genius, but younger artists were now at the centre of attention. Raphael was celebrated for his graceful frescoes, Michelangelo for his monumental force, and Bramante for his daring architecture. Leonardo, older and less inclined to rush into commissions, seemed to many like a figure from an earlier generation. Yet while others sought fame on walls and domes, he turned inward to studies that few could understand. He dissected bodies in hidden rooms, producing anatomical drawings of such detail that they read like maps of life itself. He recorded the spiral structure of muscles, the layering of tissues, and the delicate branching of veins in the brain. He noted how the heart's valves worked, anticipating discoveries modern medicine would confirm centuries later. These efforts were not widely known, but they show how Leonardo's vision was still reaching far ahead of his time. Beyond anatomy, he explored mechanics. He sketched machines for grinding convex lenses, devices for testing strength, and even designs resembling bicycles and gears that hinted at modern machinery. His notebooks reveal a restless dialogue with nature, how force could be transmitted, how energy could be conserved, and how simple tools might unlock hidden power. He studied plants as well, observing how light guided their growth and how water moved through their stems. For Leonardo, every leaf was an expression of geometry, and every flower carried lessons of balance and proportion. Despite his brilliance, Rome grew uneasy for him. The Medici valued spectacle, and their resources were drawn to other artists, whose works decorated chapels and palaces. Leonardo's projects, requiring patience and curiosity more than immediate results, appeared less useful. Rumours suggest that even rivals like Michelangelo viewed him with scepticism, seeing him as a man of endless beginnings but few completions. Yet Leonardo himself seemed untroubled. He continued to fill page after page with sketches, diagrams, and reflections, as if aware that he was leaving a legacy not for his own century but for centuries to come. In these quieter years, he found companionship in his students, especially Francesco Melzi, who became both assistant and confidant. Their bond was strong, and Melzi would later devote his life to preserving Leonardo's papers. Rome, then, was not a time of great public triumph, but of deep private creation. While others sought glory in frescoes and sculptures, Leonardo was sketching the very foundations of biology, mechanics, and optics. The city may not have understood him, but history would. By the time Leonardo reached his 60s, his journey carried him far beyond the cities of Italy. In 1516, invited by King Francis III of France, he left his homeland for the Loire Valley. The French king admired him deeply, not only as an artist but as a man of ideas, and welcomed him with generosity. Leonardo was granted the Château de Clos-Lucé, a residence near the royal castle at Amboise. There, surrounded by gardens and streams, he spent the final years of his life. Age had slowed his hands, and paralysis limited his ability to paint, yet his mind remained as active as ever. In France, Leonardo became more a philosopher than a craftsman. He advised on engineering projects, discussed science with scholars, and designed plans for royal festivities. The king often visited him, listening with fascination to his reflections on art, nature, and the cosmos. To Francis, Leonardo was not simply a painter of portraits, but a living embodiment of wisdom, a man whose presence enriched the court. Though he painted little in these years, he continued to refine ideas long nurtured in his notebooks. He studied the flow of rivers, imagined grand palaces, and sketched designs for canals and fortresses. His thoughts stretched from the smallest veins in a leaf to the grand design of cities. He saw in everything the same harmony of proportion and pattern, a belief that nature was the true teacher of all disciplines. Clolusé offered Leonardo peace. Surrounded by his students, especially Francesco Melzi, he organized his papers, arranging thousands of pages filled with drawings, diagrams, and reflections. He knew he was leaving behind more than paintings. He was preserving the vision of a lifetime. These notebooks, scattered after his death, would one day reveal the depth of his genius to the world. Despite the calm, his final years were not without melancholy. He often reflected on unfinished works and lost opportunities, aware that time had always been too short for the vastness of his ideas. Yet he also expressed gratitude for the life he'd lived, a journey from a small Tuscan village to the courts of kings. In 1519, at the age of 67, Leonardo da Vinci passed away in France. Legend says King Francis mourned him deeply, declaring that no other man had ever lived who combined so many qualities of genius. His death marked the end of a life, but the beginning of a legacy that would echo across centuries, inspiring scientists, artists, and dreamers alike. Though Leonardo passed away in 1519, the story of his genius did not end with his life. His students, especially Francesco Melzi, took responsibility for preserving his manuscripts and sketches. These notebooks, filled with mirror script writing and thousands of drawings, became the true treasure of his legacy. Within them were designs for flying machines, studies of anatomy, observations of water currents, and philosophical reflections on the nature of existence. They were fragments of a vast, unfinished encyclopedia of human knowledge. Yet after his death, these pages were scattered across Europe, sold, gifted, or forgotten in private collections. For centuries, many of them remained hidden, waiting to be rediscovered. The dispersal of his notebooks meant that the full extent of his genius was not immediately recognized. People knew him as the painter of the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, but his scientific insights lay dormant. Only later would scholars realize that Leonardo had anticipated discoveries in geology, engineering, optics, and biology by hundreds of years. His notebooks read like letters written to the future, preserved for minds that could finally understand. In the centuries that followed, artists and inventors drew inspiration from his surviving works. Painters marveled at his subtle use of light and shadow. Engineers admired his mechanical ingenuity, and scientists were stunned by the accuracy of his anatomical studies. The Renaissance had produced many great figures, yet Leonardo seemed to stand apart, his mind reaching across disciplines in ways no one else dared. His reputation grew into legend. Writers described him as the universal man, the model of Renaissance curiosity. His art entered the world's imagination, while his inventions fed the dreams of progress. Museums, libraries, and collectors sought to gather his works, piecing together fragments of a vision too large for a single lifetime. In truth, Leonardo's greatest achievement may not have been any single painting or invention, but the example of a mind that refused boundaries. He showed that art and science, imagination and observation, were not enemies but companions. He reminded humanity that to wonder, to question, and to seek endlessly was itself a form of genius. Standing today before his works, or turning the pages of his notebooks, one feels the presence of a man who lived centuries ahead of his time. His legacy does not rest only in masterpieces preserved on walls, but in the spark of curiosity he left behind, a spark that continues to guide those who believe the world is full of mysteries still waiting to be seen. The rediscovery of Leonardo's notebooks in later centuries revealed just how far his thoughts had travelled beyond the reach of his time. Pages that had once been tucked away in private libraries began to circulate among scholars, engineers, and historians. They were astonished to find not only elegant sketches but working principles of machines, anatomical diagrams of breathtaking accuracy, and observations of natural forces that modern science would eventually prove correct. Among his most famous codices, the Codex Leicester stands out, a collection of writings on water, astronomy and geology. In it, Leonardo proposed that fossils found in mountains were the remains of ancient sea creatures, evidence that oceans had once covered those lands. He studied the luminosity of the moon, suggesting it reflected the light of the sun rather than glowing on its own. These ideas, centuries before their acceptance, showed how fearlessly he challenged traditional beliefs with evidence drawn from observation. Another significant manuscript, the Codex Atlanticus, contains sketches of bridges, hydraulic machines, and even early concepts for submarines and diving suits. Each page reveals his determination to solve practical problems through creative design. He imagined ways to build faster transport, safer cities, and even machines for exploring the depths of the sea. Though few of these ideas were constructed in his lifetime, they testify to a mind constantly anticipating the needs of future generations. The notebooks also illuminate his approach to art. He wrote about perspective, colour and proportion, with the same precision he applied to mechanics. He believed the painter was not merely an artisan, but a philosopher, capable of understanding the laws of nature and reflecting them on canvas. For Leonardo, painting was the highest science, because it demanded knowledge of anatomy, light, geometry, and the soul. As the notebooks spread, Leonardo's reputation grew not only as a painter, but as a thinker whose vision united all forms of knowledge. Yet the scattered nature of these manuscripts meant that no one person could see the full extent of his genius at once. Each collection offered a glimpse, a fragment of a larger whole, like pieces of a vast mosaic. It was only over centuries, as scholars pieced together these fragments, that the true scale of Leonardo's mind became clear. He was not only a man of the Renaissance, but a figure whose ideas leapt across time. In every page of his notebooks, the untold genius of Leonardo da Vinci speaks softly, inviting us to look closer at the world and to never stop questioning its wonders. The brilliance of Leonardo's mind is often remembered through his most famous works of art, yet his vision stretched into realms rarely explored by other artists of his time. One such field was urban design. After witnessing outbreaks of plague in the crowded, unsanitary streets of Italian cities, Leonardo imagined healthier environments where people could live with dignity and safety. He sketched plans for an ideal city, complete with wide boulevards, organized districts, and carefully designed waterways. Buildings were elevated to allow fresh air to circulate, while waste and sewage were carried away by underground channels. He believed that beauty and practicality could exist together, that a well-planned city was itself a form of art. These ideas, centuries ahead of modern urban planning, reveal his constant desire to merge imagination with human needs. At the same time, Leonardo's fascination with nature never faded. He studied the flight of birds not just for machines, but for understanding balance and grace. He observed how seeds spread in spirals, how water carved stone, and how clouds shifted across the sky. To him, nothing was too small or too vast to be worth attention. He believed that truth could be found in the patterns of the world, and he sought to uncover them through tireless observation. His drawings of whirlpools, plants, and atmospheric phenomena are as striking as his mechanical designs, for they show the poetry of science. Leonardo also wrote extensively about painting, leaving behind a treatise that explained his philosophy. He insisted that painters should be scientists, learning from nature rather than copying the work of others. He described how light softened forms, how perspective gave depth, and how the human face revealed emotions through subtle changes. His words influenced generations of artists, shaping the very language of Renaissance art. Despite his visionary ideas, Leonardo often felt the weight of unfinished tasks. He began projects with enthusiasm, only to move on when curiosity pulled him elsewhere. To some patrons this seemed a flaw, yet it was also the essence of his genius. His mind raced ahead, forever seeking, never satisfied with a single accomplishment. In truth, Leonardo's greatness lay not only in what he completed, but in the questions he left behind. They invite us still to wonder, to imagine, and to pursue knowledge without boundaries. His dream of better cities, healthier lives, and deeper understanding reflects a mind that belonged not only to the 15th century, but to all centuries. Among Leonardo's many passions, his study of water stood out as one of the most persistent. He called it the driving force of nature, the blood of the earth. In his notebooks, water appears again and again, drawn in waves, spirals, and torrents. He observed rivers in flood, streams carving valleys, and droplets falling from leaves. To him, water symbolized both destruction and renewal, capable of shaping mountains while also sustaining life. His sketches of whirlpools resemble galaxies, spiraling outward with the same elegance found in the heavens. In his notes he described how water eroded rock, how it carried soil to the sea, and how it evaporated to form clouds. These ideas formed an early vision of the water cycle, centuries before it was formally understood. But Leonardo's interest was not only theoretical. He designed practical devices for lifting water, such as Archimedean screws, pumps, and canals that could redirect flow. He imagined systems to irrigate fields, to power mills, and to protect cities from flooding. His proposals to alter the Arno River near Florence reveal how he thought of water management as a way to serve both people and nature. Though many of these projects remained on paper, they foreshadowed the great engineering works of later centuries. Water also served Leonardo as a metaphor in his art. He compared the rippling of hair to flowing currents, the folds of fabric to eddies in a stream. In his paintings, backgrounds often contain rivers, lakes, or waterfalls, subtle reminders of his belief that all forms were connected through the same principles. Even the Mona Lisa sits before a landscape shaped by winding rivers and eroded cliffs, as if her mysterious smile were tied to the eternal flow of the natural world. Beyond water, Leonardo's vision extended to geology. He studied fossils embedded in stone, arguing they were not tricks of nature, but remains of the living creatures from ancient seas. This challenged prevailing views, suggesting the Earth was far older than most believed. He examined strata in cliffs, noting how layers of rock revealed history written in stone. These observations, simple yet profound, laid foundations for the science of geology long before the field existed. Leonardo's genius lay in uniting observation with imagination. Where others saw only a river, he saw the motion of the cosmos. Where they saw a fossil, he saw the passage of time. His vision of water as both a physical and symbolic force captures the essence of his mind, practical, poetic, and endlessly curious. Through these studies, Leonardo was not just recording facts, but weaving a tapestry of understanding that connected the smallest ripple to the grandest patterns of creation. Leonardo's exploration of the human body remains one of the most striking examples of his genius. At a time when dissections were rare and often frowned upon, he sought special permission from hospitals and monasteries to study cadavers. By candlelight, he carefully examined muscles, bones, and organs, recording every detail in drawings that remain breathtaking today. His studies of the heart were among his most extraordinary. He described the way valves opened and closed, how blood swirled through chambers, and how the heart functioned as a pump. These insights were not fully confirmed until centuries later, yet Leonardo wrote of them with clarity and conviction. His fascination with the mechanics of breathing, the structure of the spine, and the branching of veins showed a vision far beyond his age. He even explored embryology, drawing the fetus within the womb with accuracy and sensitivity that seem modern. These images reveal both scientific precision and human reverence, as though he understood that life itself was sacred even as he sought its secrets. Leonardo's notebooks also contain reflections on the connection between body and soul. He believed that the movements of muscles reflected emotions, and that to paint a face truthfully, one had to understand the inner workings of expression. This union of art and science gave his portraits their unmatched depth. When we look at the Mona Lisa or the St. John the Baptist, we see not only physical likeness, but the suggestion of thoughts and feelings beneath the surface. Beyond anatomy, Leonardo considered the body as a machine governed by natural laws. He compared tendons to ropes, bones to levers, and joints to hinges. Yet he never reduced humanity to mechanics alone. He saw in the human form the harmony of mathematics, proportion, and divine beauty. His Vitruvian Man embodies this vision, placing the body within circle and square, symbolizing the link between microcosm and macrocosm. Sadly, most of these studies remained unpublished in his lifetime. Had they been shared widely, medicine might have advanced centuries earlier, but even hidden, they testify to a restless mind that would not accept appearances without searching for deeper truths. Through his anatomical work, Leonardo gave future generations not only knowledge but an example of fearless curiosity. He showed that to understand the world, one must look closely, question boldly, and unite observation with imagination. In every page of his anatomical drawings we glimpse both the scientist and the poet, both the engineer and the artist. An untold genius forever ahead of his time, Leonardo's fascination with machines was as profound as his study of the human body. He believed that by understanding motion, balance, and force, one could unlock the secrets of both nature and technology. His notebooks are filled with sketches of gears, levers, pulleys, and mechanisms that resemble modern devices. He drew early concepts of helicopters with spiral rotors, parachutes shaped like pyramids, and armoured vehicles powered by men turning cranks inside. None of these were built in his lifetime, but their principles were remarkably sound. His armoured car, for example, anticipated the design of tanks centuries before they appeared on battlefields. His flying machines, though impractical then, reflected a deep understanding of aerodynamics that engineers would later confirm. What makes these inventions so extraordinary is not only their creativity, but the way Leonardo connected them to observations of the natural world. He compared wings to the structure of bird feathers, screws to the spiral of shells, and wheels to the circular flow of water. To him, invention was not about copying existing tools, but about listening to nature's designs and translating them into human form. Beyond fantastical machines, Leonardo also designed practical devices. He created plans for improved looms, water pumps, and cranes that could ease the work of builders and craftsmen. His bridges were particularly innovative, some portable, designed to be carried by armies and assembled quickly, others arched elegantly over rivers with structural efficiency that modern engineers still admire. His mind never stopped seeking ways to combine elegance with utility. Despite his brilliance, Leonardo often left these projects unfinished, their blueprints locked within his notebooks. He seemed more satisfied by the act of imagining than by the act of completing. For him, the process of discovery was as valuable as the product. Patrons sometimes grew impatient, but history has come to treasure these sketches as windows into the birth of modern engineering. His machines reveal not a man obsessed with war or spectacle, but one enchanted by the possibilities of motion and the harmony of design. They remind us that the seeds of many technologies we take for granted today were planted in the mind of a Renaissance thinker who lived 500 years ago. Leonardo's mechanical visions prove that his genius was not bound by his century. He saw beyond the limits of tools, beyond the constraints of resources, into a future where imagination and science would merge. In every sketch, every gear, every unfinished idea, we can feel the pulse of a mind always turning, always inventing, always centuries ahead of itself. While Leonardo's machines revealed the ingenuity of his engineering mind, his writings also uncovered a deep philosophical spirit. He was not content to record inventions or sketches alone. he reflected constantly on the meaning of knowledge itself. In his notebooks, written in careful mirror script, he asked questions about life, time, and the order of the universe. He often wrote that experience was the truest teacher, more reliable than traditional books. Those who fall in love with practice without science, he noted, are like a sailor who steers a ship without a rudder. These reflections show how he valued the balance of observation and reason, believing that true wisdom came only from uniting the two. His approach was radically modern, emphasizing experiment over authority, centuries before the scientific method was formalized. Leonardo also mused on the nature of painting, declaring it to be the highest form of knowledge because it united science and art. A painter, he argued, must understand anatomy, geometry, light, and even psychology to capture reality. This conviction guided his every work, making his portraits and religious scenes far more than images. They were studies of the soul itself. Yet Leonardo's philosophy extended beyond art and science. He believed deeply in the interconnectedness of all things. He wrote that the body of man reflected the body of the earth. Veins were like rivers, bones like mountains, lungs like winds. This vision of unity shaped how he observed the world, finding harmony and patterns that stretched from the smallest shell to the greatest star. Such thoughts reveal not only a scientist but a poet of knowledge. Despite his brilliance, Leonardo often expressed humility. He admitted that life was short and knowledge vast, and that no man could hope to master all its mysteries. He saw himself not as a finished authority but as a lifelong student. This humility gave his genius its restless energy. He was never satisfied, always searching, always aware of how much remained unseen. In his later years, especially in France, he spoke less of grand projects and more of reflections, offering wisdom to the young King Francis and his court. To them, he was a sage as much as an inventor. His words reminded listeners that the pursuit of knowledge was not just about power or glory, but about wonder. Through his writings, Leonardo left a legacy beyond machines and paintings. He gave the world a philosophy of curiosity, an invitation to see with clearer eyes, to question boldly, and to honour the unity of all creation. One of the most remarkable aspects of Leonardo's legacy is how his mind bridged the worlds of art and science so seamlessly. At a time when most people viewed these pursuits as separate, he saw them as inseparable halves of truth. His art was infused with scientific observation, and his science was guided by artistic sensitivity. In The Last Supper, for example, the drama of human emotion is arranged with mathematical precision, each figure placed in harmony with perspective lines that converge toward Christ. In his anatomical drawings, the curves of muscles and veins are rendered with a beauty equal to any painting. For Leonardo, knowledge was not divided by discipline. It was a single fabric woven from many threads. His interest in optics demonstrates this unity. He studied how light entered the eye, how reflections appeared on water, and how shadows softened at their edges. These observations shaped the delicate transitions of tone in his paintings, allowing him to create lifelike depth that astonished his contemporaries. His writings describe light almost with reverence, as both a physical phenomenon and a symbol of truth. By painting light, he believed, the artist revealed not only form but the spirit of the world. Leonardo also devoted time to the study of proportion. Inspired by the ancient Roman architect Vitruvius, he measured the human body with relentless care, seeking to uncover universal laws. His Vitruvian Man, a figure inscribed within circle and square, embodies this pursuit. It is not only a drawing of symmetry but a statement of philosophy, that humanity reflects the cosmos, and the cosmos can be measured within humanity. Such ideas gave the Renaissance its spirit of harmony, and Leonardo stood at its heart. Yet even as he united disciplines, Leonardo remained a man of endless beginnings. He rarely finished what he started, leaving behind fragments of projects, half-drawn plans, and unpolished essays. To his patrons, this was a flaw. To us, it is a gift. It reveals the workings of a mind that valued exploration over completion. His fragments are like windows left open, inviting us to continue the journey he began. In this way, Leonardo's greatest masterpiece may not have been a painting or invention, but the example of how to see. He taught that curiosity itself is a form of genius, that wonder is as important as knowledge, and that the boundaries we draw between disciplines are illusions. Through his life, Leonardo left us not just works of art, but a model of thinking that continues to inspire across centuries. Leonardo's curiosity extended into fields that many of his peers never considered worthy of study. He observed the habits of animals, the structure of plants, and even the play of air currents. To him, the entire world was a laboratory, each detail a clue to greater truths. His botanical drawings, precise and elegant, capture the spirals of leaves around stems, the veins within petals, and the geometry hidden in flowers. He noticed that leaves often arranged themselves so each could receive sunlight, an early insight into what scientists now call phyllotaxis. In seeds, he saw the promise of entire forests. In roots, the same branching forms found in rivers and blood vessels. Nature, he wrote, was the greatest teacher, and those who studied her closely would find lessons in every corner of creation. This belief guided not only his sketches but his philosophy. Leonardo often compared natural forms to human inventions, noting that shells resembled armour, wings resembled sails, and trees mirrored architectural structures. He saw no divide between what was natural and what was made. All were bound by the same universal principles. His interest in animals also reflected his compassion. Accounts describe him buying birds in markets simply to release them, unwilling to see them caged. He kept notebooks filled with studies of horses, cats, and dogs, capturing their movements with the same precision he used for human anatomy. His drawings of horses, in particular, reveal both power and grace, inspired by his abandoned project of the colossal bronze horse in Milan. To Leonardo, animals were not inferior beings, but part of the same great web of life. His observations even stretched into meteorology. He sketched clouds, storms, and rainfall, attempting to understand the invisible currents of air. He wrote about how heat rose, how wind shifted, and how water condensed into drops. These notes, though simple, anticipated principles later confirmed by science. They show a man unwilling to stop at what was visible. He wanted to know the causes hidden behind appearances. Yet despite his endless studies, Leonardo never lost his sense of wonder. He described the patterns of nature not in dry language but with awe, as if each discovery were a glimpse of something divine. This poetic quality, mingled with scientific precision, remains one of the most distinctive marks of his genius. He was not only cataloguing facts but weaving them into a vision of harmony. For Leonardo, the world was alive with meaning, and to observe it closely was to participate in its beauty. In the final years of his life, settled in France under the patronage of King Francis I, Leonardo entered a quieter but deeply reflective stage. Though his hands had grown weak and his body slower, his mind remained as vivid as ever. At the Château de Clos-Lucé, near the royal residence of Amboise, he surrounded himself with trusted students, models, and manuscripts. The king himself often visited, walking with Leonardo through gardens and listening as he spoke of the mysteries of light, motion, and the harmony of nature. Francis admired him not only as a painter, but as a philosopher, calling him my father and treating him with rare affection. Leonardo's role in France was less about producing great works and more about sharing wisdom. He advised on architectural projects, suggested improvements for waterways, and designed pageants for courtly entertainments. His notebooks from this time still show sketches of canals, fortresses, and even whimsical inventions, yet more often they contain reflections, musings on life, the brevity of time, and the endless wonders of the natural world. Though he painted little, he worked to organize his writings, entrusting them to Francesco Melzi, the devoted pupil who would guard his legacy. The Mona Lisa, which he carried with him to France, remained a companion until his last days. He continued to refine it with delicate touches, perhaps never truly considering it finished. To Leonardo, every work was a living thing, evolving with time. At Clos Lucé, he also reflected on the limits of human effort. He wrote that knowledge was infinite and life too short, admitting that no man could grasp all truths. Yet this humility did not bring him despair. Instead, it gave him peace. He had spent his years not in pursuit of fame, but of understanding, and in that quest he had lived fully. Visitors remembered him as gentle, humorous, and endlessly curious, even in old age. His conversations range from the movement of stars to the growth of plants, from the design of machines to the mysteries of the soul. On May 2nd, 1519, Leonardo da Vinci passed away, attended by Melzi and mourned by the king who had cherished him. Legend claims Francis held him in his arms at the end, though whether true or not, it reflects the depth of affection between them. Leonardo's death marked the close of a remarkable life, but his influence had only begun. He left behind not just paintings and designs, but a way of seeing the world, a vision where art and science, beauty and truth forever intertwine. After Leonardo's passing, the responsibility of preserving his legacy fell largely to his beloved pupil Francesco Melzi. Melzi gathered his master's vast collection of papers, thousands of sheets filled with sketches, diagrams and writings, and carried them back to Italy. For years he worked to keep them safe, knowing that they contained the essence of Leonardo's genius. Yet despite his devotion, the sheer volume of material made it impossible to protect everything. Over time, the notebooks were scattered, sold, or forgotten, pieces of a great puzzle lost to centuries. Some manuscripts entered the hands of collectors, others lay hidden in monasteries or libraries waiting to be rediscovered. This dispersal delayed the world's full appreciation of Leonardo's scientific contributions. For generations, he was remembered primarily as the painter of the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. His notebooks, locked away, revealed their treasures only slowly. When fragments began to surface in later centuries, scholars realized they held insights centuries ahead of their time. In these pages, Leonardo studied geology, anticipating modern theories of fossils and erosion. He analyzed the movement of water, laying foundations for hydrodynamics. He dissected the human body with such accuracy that his anatomical drawings remain unmatched in beauty and precision. He designed bridges, flying machines, and armoured vehicles long before such things could exist. The rediscovery of these works transformed Leonardo's image. He was no longer seen only as a great artist, but as the archetype of the Renaissance man, a thinker whose mind embraced every discipline. His scattered codices, including the Codex Atlanticus and the Codex Leicester, offered glimpses of a mind that seemed to belong to the future as much as to the past. Today, we understand that Leonardo's true genius lay not simply in invention or painting, but in the unity of his vision. He showed that knowledge was not divided by borders. Art, science, and philosophy were parts of the same whole. His restless curiosity continues to inspire, reminding us that learning is a lifelong journey. Even incomplete, his manuscripts carry the weight of centuries whispering across time. They invite us to wonder, to imagine, and to seek connections between things we once thought separate. Through Melzi's care, through chance discoveries, and through the persistence of scholars, Leonardo's voice survived. Though scattered, it remains clear. To observe the world with open eyes is to step closer to its truth. The centuries following Leonardo's death saw his reputation grow in ways even he could not have imagined. At first, his fame rested almost entirely on his paintings, especially the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. These works inspired awe not only for their beauty, but for their lifelike presence, their ability to capture emotions so subtle that viewers felt as if they were meeting living souls. Yet as his notebooks slowly resurfaced, a fuller picture emerged. Leonardo was not merely a painter, but a visionary whose thoughts extended into nearly every field of human inquiry. Scholars pieced together fragments of his writings, astonished to find theories of geology, sketches of flying machines, and designs for bridges and canals that prefigured modern engineering. This rediscovery reshaped how history remembered him. He became the very symbol of the Renaissance, an age defined by the union of art and science, of humanism and discovery. Writers of later centuries praised him as the universal man, whose genius refused boundaries. Romantic thinkers saw in him the embodiment of creativity itself, a figure who sought truth in every form, whether in the curl of a wave, the anatomy of a horse, or the smile of a woman. The 19th century brought new attention to his manuscripts, with careful studies and publications that revealed his ideas to a wider audience. Engineers marvelled at his technical drawings, doctors admired his anatomical studies, and philosophers reflected on his vision of unity in nature. His work seemed to anticipate entire branches of modern science, making him appear not only ahead of his time but almost timeless. In the 20th century, Leonardo's influence deepened further. Reproductions of his work spread globally, and his notebooks inspired generations of scientists, artists, and inventors. He became a cultural icon, celebrated not only in museums but in literature, film, and popular imagination. The Mona Lisa, displayed in the Louvre, became the most visited painting in the world, her smile a symbol of mystery and genius. Meanwhile, exhibitions of his codices revealed the restless motion of his mind to millions. Today, Leonardo is remembered as more than a figure of the past. He represents possibility, the idea that curiosity can carry us beyond the limits of our age. His legacy reminds us that disciplines we often separate, art, science, philosophy, are most powerful when united. In every rediscovered page, every preserved sketch, the untold genius of Leonardo da Vinci continues to unfold, urging us to see the world not as fragments, but as a whole. His spirit endures wherever wonder and knowledge meet. As the modern era unfolded, Leonardo's influence only grew stronger, reaching far beyond the walls of museums. Scientists and engineers turned to his notebooks with fascination, finding in them not only historical curiosities but genuine insight. Aeronautical engineers studied his sketches of wings and propellers, recognizing the seeds of modern flight. Civil engineers admired his bridge designs, some of which have been built in recent years to test their structural soundness, and to great success. Even robotics researchers have traced inspiration to his mechanical knights, early visions of automatons designed to move by gears and pulleys. In medicine, his anatomical drawings gained renewed respect. Physicians and surgeons marvelled at the accuracy with which he depicted organs, bones, and muscles. His rendering of the heart's valves, long overlooked, was later proven correct by modern science, demonstrating how keen observation could anticipate discoveries centuries ahead. For artists, Leonardo remained a guide to the blending of technique and imagination. His writings on perspective, light, and composition became foundational texts for painters long after his time. Students of art history continue to examine his use of sfumato, the gentle blending of tones that gave his portraits their haunting, lifelike quality. To modern eyes, the Mona Lisa is not only a masterpiece of art but also a symbol of the mystery of human creativity. Beyond technical studies, Leonardo became a cultural figure, celebrated in novels, films, and exhibitions. His name came to stand for genius itself, the limitless reach of human curiosity. He inspired characters in literature, themes in philosophy, and even metaphors in everyday language. To call someone a Da Vinci became to honour their versatility and vision. Yet amidst all the admiration, one truth remains clear. Leonardo's greatness lies not only in what he completed but in how he thought. His mind was never still, never satisfied with easy answers. He questioned everything, looked closer, and sought patterns where others saw chaos. He lived as if the world were a book written in a language of shapes, motions, and harmonies, waiting to be read. This spirit resonates deeply in our own age of discovery. In science, in art, in technology, his example reminds us that boundaries are illusions and that the boldest ideas often emerge from connections across fields. Leonardo da Vinci's untold genius is not confined to history. It continues as a living invitation for each of us to look more carefully, to wonder more deeply, and to imagine more freely than our time seems to allow. In the 21st century, Leonardo's presence feels more alive than ever. His works are studied not only in museums and universities, but also in laboratories, classrooms, and even technology companies. Engineers look at his sketches of helicopters, submarines, and armoured vehicles as prototypes of modern inventions. Computer scientists admire the way he broke down motion into small observable parts, anticipating methods of design and simulation. Architects revisit his plans for ideal cities, recognizing in them principles of sustainability and public health that are urgently relevant today. In many ways, Leonardo continues to participate in our conversations about the future, his ideas echoing across time. One of the most striking aspects of his modern influence is how universally he inspires. Artists see in him the master of light and shadow, blending colours into forms that still breathe across centuries. Scientists see the observer who measured fossils, currents, and anatomy with unshakable precision. Philosophers see the thinker who asked what knowledge truly means, who believed that truth must be experienced rather than merely repeated. Even ordinary people standing before the Mona Lisa or leafing through a facsimile of his notebooks feel the spark of curiosity that defined him. His genius has become not just a story of history, but a symbol of possibility, proof that human imagination can stretch beyond its own era. Modern exhibitions of his codices draw crowds in every corner of the world. Viewers marvel at the delicate lines of his drawings, but even more at the realization that one man carried so many disciplines within him. In a world often divided into specialists, Leonardo reminds us of the power of integration. He shows that art and science, logic and beauty belong together. His presence in popular culture reinforces this truth. From novels and films to digital projects that animate his machines, Leonardo appears everywhere as a guide to the boundless potential of the mind. Some see him as the archetype of the inventor, others as the eternal artist, but all agree that his vision was centuries ahead. And yet, beneath the legend, there remains something profoundly human about him. He struggled with unfinished works, faced the impatience of patrons, and doubted himself at times. His greatness was not perfection, but persistence, the willingness to keep asking, to keep observing, to keep sketching even when the world could not follow. That humility, woven with brilliance, is why his story endures. Leonardo da Vinci is not simply remembered as a man of his time, he has become a man of all times, a mirror in which every age can see its own dreams reflected. As we reflect on Leonardo's legacy, it becomes clear that his genius cannot be measured solely by his masterpieces or inventions. His true gift was a way of seeing, a vision that united the scattered pieces of the world into one harmonious whole. In every drawing, whether of a bird in flight or a storm cloud over the mountains, he sought the same truth, that nature followed patterns, and those patterns could be understood if one observed with patience. This belief guided everything he touched, from the folds of fabric in his paintings to the designs of bridges and fortresses in his notebooks. It is tempting to imagine Leonardo as a man of certainty, but his writings reveal something more human. He admitted frustration at his unfinished works, and he confessed that knowledge was infinite while life was short. Yet rather than despair, he chose wonder. For him, the unanswered question was not a failure, but an invitation to keep exploring. This humility gave his genius its enduring charm. It reminds us that even the greatest minds are students of the world, never its masters. In many ways, Leonardo's life was a mosaic of fragments, projects begun but left incomplete, notes scattered, ideas recorded in haste. But together, these fragments form a picture larger than any single achievement. They show us a man who refused to accept limits, who believed that the world was full of mysteries worth chasing, even if they could never all be solved. His influence continues not only because of what he created, but because of how he lived, with endless curiosity, with courage to cross boundaries, and with reverence for the beauty of creation. Today, as we face our own challenges in science, technology, and art, Leonardo stands as a reminder that innovation is born from wonder and progress from curiosity. His notebooks whisper across centuries, encouraging us to look closer at the swirl of water, the curve of a leaf, or the smile of a stranger. They remind us that the same patterns guiding rivers and stars also live within us. To study Leonardo is not only to honour the past, but to glimpse the future, a future where imagination and reason walk hand in hand. As this long journey through his untold genius nears its close, one truth becomes clear. Leonardo da Vinci was more than a painter, more than an inventor, more than a philosopher. He was all of these at once, a rare mind who showed us that knowledge itself is an art, and that to see deeply is the greatest masterpiece of all. The story of Leonardo da Vinci is not just the story of one man, but the story of human potential itself. Born in a small Tuscan village, without formal education or noble rank, he rose to embody the very spirit of the Renaissance. Through sheer curiosity, patience, and imagination, he crossed boundaries that most of his contemporaries could not even see. He painted works that remain among the greatest treasures of art, yet he also dreamed of flying machines, studied fossils, dissected hearts, and designed cities. In him, the painter, engineer, scientist, and philosopher were not separate identities but expressions of one unified vision. His life reminds us that knowledge is never complete, that the search itself is what gives meaning. To read his notebooks is to walk beside him as he observes the flight of a bird, the swirling of water, or the smile of a human face. Each page feels like a conversation across centuries, as if he were still whispering his discoveries to us. And in truth, he is. For Leonardo's genius has never belonged only to the past. It continues to shape the present and inspire the future. In our own age of technology and discovery, we recognize in him a kindred spirit. He teaches us that progress does not come from dividing art and science, but from uniting them. He shows that imagination is not opposed to reason, but its partner. He proves that to wonder is the beginning of wisdom, and to observe carefully is the foundation of creation. Standing before the Mona Lisa today, one feels not only the presence of a woman painted 500 years ago, but the vision of a man who saw beyond time. Looking into her eyes is like looking into Leonardo's mind itself, mysterious, searching, alive. His legacy is not confined to galleries or libraries. It lives in every scientist who asks a new question, every artist who looks closer, every dreamer who dares to imagine more than the world offers. Leonardo da Vinci remains, even now, a companion to those who believe that knowledge is infinite and beauty universal. His untold genius lies not just in what he achieved, but in how he inspired us to continue seeking, to continue asking, to continue creating. And perhaps that is why he still feels so present. Because Leonardo did not simply live ahead of his time, he lived for all time.